Okay, good to go.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for episode 33 of SEO Fight Club. Have an exciting, action-packed episode for you today. But let's go ahead and get into our boilerplate. Everybody's favorite part of anything is always the boilerplate.
I only read the boilerplate and then I move on.
Yeah, it's always the spiciest meatball.
When the Apple terms and conditions come up, I read every word.
Oh, yeah, it's so exciting.
That's because you're a lawyer. You're like, oh, I understand that.
It's like the previews when you go to see a movie. It's just all action. So, Kyle, have you heard about this new thing called IMG?
I've heard a little bit.
Well, what have you heard so far?
It's a community for people to come together to learn about. Right now, it's primarily SEO driven because we're mostly SEO guys, but ultimately it'll be a platform for all things internet marketing. But a lot of good stuff happening there. Wish it was happening faster. I'm sure a lot of people do. But it is launched. It is going. The community is going. We've got rooms set up for different things. The video area, which is growing. Those types of things. It's all there. It's all happening. What have you heard, Ted?
I've heard that the chatting has started to pick up. So we've got, we're getting to a point of critical mass in the chat to make it awesome and cool. And we're just planning on more and better as time goes. So you got to, log in, sign up. It's free to sign up. And eventually we're going to have a lot of neat things in there. And we're currently developing cool news applications, cool tool databases. We're doing all this stuff currently. And so you got to be in there to, help us turn it into the community you want it to be. So you got to be involved and you got to participate. So I hope everyone goes over there and signs up.
Awkward silence.
Awkward silence because I'm a professional. All right. So SEO this week, Clint, what can people expect?
15 news stories this week. Two of the big highlights that I really appreciated were the authority builders or authority hackers, one or the other. They did a study on anchor text that was really in depth. I like that one a lot. I think you guys should go check that out for sure. And then some tools, found 5 different posts on different tools to help you do reporting or do some technical fixes like anchor text or alt tag text fixes using Python. So those would be pretty interesting for most people.
Awesome. So yeah, check that out. If you haven't seen SEO this week, saves you a huge amount of time because Clint pours through all the search marketing news and condenses it to the 5 or 10 that really matter most each week. Good way to get that time back in your week. So today's topic, common SEO mistakes. What do you guys think about this as a topic?
I think we spoke a little bit last week about, to be honest, I think negative SEO. I mentioned this. I think 90% all of it is self-inflicted, and that kind of comes into a lot of the common SEO mistakes. Like when the things that harm yourself more than anything are you, and these common mistakes. I think it's a whole branch of negative SEO is just self-inflicted nonsense.
Yep. Yeah, when I looked at this topic, I was just thinking, well, what are the 10 things I always go to first in an audit? What are the things that I see time and time again that are just the low-hanging fruit of any SEO doing an audit that everybody should already know and I should never, ever see, but I just keep seeing them again and again. So I put in those, and I'd imagine every SEO's list of what those 10 first go-to checks are probably differs from SEO to SEO. But I put in my 10. So the do follow social links, it's the quick and easy one. Usually people implement these site-wide, so it's typically a site-wide problem. Google has said on many occasions that when you link to a website, you're spending your page's authority to boost those websites. So, if that concept is true, you want to keep your authority on your page, and you want to no follow your social links and other offsite links. And commonly these plugins, they're all do follow. So you spend your page authority site-wide to give Facebook a boost, and they thank you for your help.
You're saying here, Ted, that the biggest issue is that because these are on every page of your site. So every page of your site is sending this juice out to all of those social.
Yeah. And so it's, considering your primary navigation is there in a page rank context to boost your site, that's supposed to be your site-wide effect. And so when you make every page incrementally weaker by do following these links, theoretically you're hurting yourself site-wide. So
take it on the other approach. If you leave these do follow, as you're ranking your website for your brand, you're ranking your Twitter, your Facebook, etc., all at the same time. So you can take over your brand name page, leaving it less opportunities for, like the Yelps or your competitors ranking for your brand name at the same time. So I can see leaving them open and closing them. The issue that's probably confusing to a lot of people is you say, and a lot of people for shaping PR or page authority or whatever how you want to call it, is no follow, but all the tools say you should do follow these. How do you get around that conversation?
Well, I think intention is the thing. If you are properly managing all of your social profiles and you have them set up with links back to your website, then it's kind of a handshake backlink. But most of the time I don't see that. People just have a page they neglect, and then they do follow these to the page they neglect that has no reciprocal backlink. And in those cases, it's just a wash.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think intent matters. If you have an actual plan to dominate page one, then by all means. But so far, I think I'm one of the only people I've ever met who's done that. I haven't seen many clients attempt to dominate all of page one. Pointless headings. And usually these are problems designed into the WordPress templates that people buy from Monster Templates and Theme Forest and other websites, where they go and get a $20 to $50 template that looks neat, but they haven't really investigated the source code of those templates to see how messed up they are from an SEO standpoint. And you'll find that the headings are being used for weird transactional things that have no keyword relevance, and they're going to be hard to change later. And you generally want your headings to be about your keywords or keywords related to your keywords. But if you're putting all your read more in your H2s, that's kind of crazy. And sometimes it can be just really weird stuff. Like I've seen websites that put their logo image in a heading tag for no reason. I guess it gets the image alt text conceptually inside of a heading, but nobody knows if it works that way. So what do you guys think about pointless headings and templates?
Well, I see this all the time. This is a constant thing when you come into a site, and the headings are simply done for aesthetic purposes. They're not done for any kind of strategic, in terms of what this page is actually about. And I think the thing that a lot of people miss is that your headings should really match ideally a Roman numeral outline. This is the one thing I think that both humans and search engines agree on, is a well-structured page that makes sense is easier to read. And so for search engines, what they need to see is that your H2s are subheadings that actually mean something. So if you're using, like in this example, H2 about and the read more, that's just for the font size. And it's really a lazy way to do font size. And really what the search engine first will read that as is like, oh, this is a really important word for this page, because it's looking at it like an outline. This is your A and your B in your 7th grade outline. For the team, you would get an F. So think about it. If your 7th grade teacher would give you an F, Google is not going to give you an A. It's never going to work. So
I think us as SEOs, we got two fights on our hand. One is, I understand why devs use the H tag so much, because you're coding a whole site and you just wanted to make the process a little bit faster and more consistent. So you don't have to keep in your mail in, these are the font sizes that I use for these elements, etc., when you're bouncing around in different page templates. So you use the H tags to set that up. And we've gone through that with our devs, and the roundabout way we've figured out how to do it is let them design the site how they ever want to do it. They use the H tags however they want, and then I'll go back and pick out the specific elements that need to be changed to font size and weight, and he'll remove the H tags. So that's how we solve that. The other thing that we're fighting against is you got John Mueller running around saying that heading tags don't matter for SEO, which all three of us know, and probably anyone who's watching this knows that that's bullshit. But he's putting that out there, and then the new people, the devs that are looking to learn SEO or want some aspects of SEO or want to get some input from Google, and are listening to that or seeing it on the search engine journals or watches that circulate that rubbish. That's how they're informed. So now you got to compete against, well, Google said.
Yeah. In that particular case, that's a classic Google telling a half-truth. And the half-truth is what John was actually trying to get at, I think, is that headings alone will not make or break your ranking. But then the whole search engine roundtable community took that as headings are not a factor.
Yeah.
And that's simply not true. So not optimizing images. I see this a lot where people will create carousels and they'll have these absolutely massive full-size 4K graphics, and they'll scale them to the size they need on the page, but they will actually transfer the full-size graphic. And this is often harmless when people are on broadband on a desktop computer. But where it becomes terrible is when you're standing out at the bus stop on a mobile phone on a 4G network connection, and you're trying to download 37 megabytes of high-resolution graphics. So how often do you guys see this problem?
That one's consistent. Like I have that page speed optimization service, and it's not beyond the realm that you'd have a 2 gigabyte image sitting on the homepage, for example, and it doesn't need to be that. But they just a lot of people get lazy, or they forget. Like I've done it myself, where I'll forget to resize an image. Luckily for me, I use Smush, and it crops the image right for me automatic on upload, which is something that everyone should look at as a plugin that'll do that for you. But I think that's the really hands down is the biggest problem with page speed optimization, in particular for a WordPress site. The plugins are really good at handling everything else but the images, and this is something that you have to be cognizant of when you're putting them on there in the first place.
Yeah, like for e-commerce, like a common pitfall is like sizing charts. And so for one retailer, they had this absolutely massive image for apparel sizing, and it's effectively just a table of text. So I had them rewrite it as an HTML table. It went from this massive graphic to about 300 bytes of HTML.
Yep.
So oftentimes, in many of these cases, an image isn't even needed.
And also for e-commerce, they want to highlight, especially if you're talking like in this case, the jewelry. If you're selling $1,000 jewelry, you're going to need a picture that sells that $1,000 jewelry. So it's got to be high res, and they don't see that, or they're not able to discern that fine line between what you should have for the sales process and what you should have for the user to make the site usable and faster. So,
well, it needs to be optimal for the device that it's displayed on,
yeah,
but no greater than that. And so that's the tricky part, is you need to have your mobile phone images, you need to have your tablet, you need to have your desktop images.
that's why the plugins are getting better now. Like Imagify and Smush Pro are getting better, finding the ranges that your theme requires for the different devices and creating images for them, and they're keeping them still clean. So there's plugins out there to save you from this drama if you have it already. Thank God, because if you're dealing with an e-commerce site with 10,000 products and they have 10,000 bad images, you get a nightmare in your hands.
Yep.
Ted, quick question on that last one. So that's optimizing like the size of the images. What do you think about like every file name needs to have words in it rather than 12345.jpg?
I prefer them to be named, and so that's ideal. But sometimes it's just not doable. It depends upon your CMS and your workflows as to whether or not you can do that.
What do you think about keywords in them specifically? Like not even just naming them for what they are, but really trying to get keywords into all of them.
Well, I like that idea. It should be the keywords of what it is. So if it's a sterling silver amethyst bracelet, ideally that's along the lines of what it would be called. But if you have 54 of those, obviously you have to vary the names somehow. So maybe you number them. Maybe you have more specific, artistic naming of the products. Who knows? Maybe it's the keywords in combination with a product ID. But your workflow and your management system all have to cooperate with whatever scheme that is. And for the large online retailers, I mean, you're talking about a CMS in the background. You typically have automated scripts that will copy out the image files to a cluster of CDN servers. And, it's usually a difficult thing to change once your store is already up and running. So design it right the first time. Targeting the wrong keywords. So this is one I see a lot, where people will name a product something that nobody would ever search for, or they name a category that way, or they target a word that they think their customers are going to use, but their customers aren't actually using that. Those types of targeting mistakes.
This was probably the biggest one, especially if you're doing client stuff, because they come to you with this broad keyword because they got some tool that says there's a whole bunch of search volume and that's the broad keyword I should be looking for. When that broad keyword is really an informational term, there's not a buyer there. They're searching for information about that product. So, I think it's our job as SEOs to rein them in and be like, look, we're going to go after this term that has 1,000 people searching for it, but they're actually buyers versus the 22,000. And being able to articulate to your clients the
Am I frozen or is he frozen?
I think he's frozen. I got worried there for a second.
I think it's just about to give some real nugs right there too.
Yeah. Well, too bad, guys. We'll have to sign up for IMG to hear his thoughts on that one.
It's like the most important thing you'll ever know about SEO is something that I see on this too is from time to time you'll have a site where the client will tell you that the name of this thing is a Flibberty widget, and that might be the technical name, but nobody is searching that when it's a chair. You know, they want, you know, comfortable chair is what they're searching.
Yep.
Not, the technical term or whatever it might be. So I see that happening a lot.
Yeah. You know,
industry name, and when it's a B to C, they're not doing the industry name search.
Yeah, and those technical jargon and those insider terms for what the product buyers call the thing. When you target those, what you end up getting are your competitors, other people that source those technical terms. And so, yeah, they're usually not customers. They're usually competitors that know the jargon.
Derek Booth, who's an AdWords pro, had a pretty interesting thought on that one. He said, if you get the opportunity or push for this opportunity, try to sit with the people that answer the phones at the company. Because when they answer the phone, how that person says it to the phone operator, that's how they search for it in Google. So
yeah.
Get really good information on how people are finding, because that's what they're thinking of. You know, that's their thought process. Whatever they verbalize to the receptionist, that's what they had actually searched in a Google search, and then you can start targeting things around that.
Yeah, and the two best bullpens to spend time in any like online retailer are the customer service bullpen and the engineering bullpen. It's just a wealth of things you can overhear. So, Clint, we heard that the absolute most important thing in SEO is, and then you crashed.
Yep, you guys can thank Spectrum for that. You know, the whole time I lived in Washington, I hated Comcast, and now I miss them so bad.
Oh. Okay, well, we'll move along. So that one is lost to the H's. So assuming your on page is good, this one I see about weekly. Somebody will come to me saying, Ted, my rankings fell, but it's not my on page. Or Ted, I can't get to where I want to be, but it's not my on page. My on page is perfect. And so I asked them, you know, have you measured? You know, have you gotten a Quora report? Have you done POP? Have you measured where you stand compared to the competition? And usually they say no. And then it's like, well, how do you know your on page is good? You know?
Well, you know what? Often they followed the best practices.
Yeah.
You know, or they had a course and they've been successful with it before. That's the thing. You know, they've done it before and had success, so they're doing it now and not having success. So they know that the on page is good because it worked before.
Yeah, and so many SEOs out there like accuse us of peddling our wares. You know, they think we're just, you know, selling software to sell software. But the real question is if it worked before and it's not working now, what's different? And the only way you can tell what's different is to measure. So whether it's our measurement tools or somebody else's measurement tools, or you manually going out there and measuring, you're going to have to measure to figure out what's different and what you can try.
A small gripe on that line. I like people that are like, I don't need a tool. I just do it by hand. Well, it's the exact same fucking thing. Grab a tool and save yourself about 5 hours.
Yeah, you know, but some people have to learn the hard way. It's just how they're wired. So they gotta.
Well, before I bought both your softwares and you guys started stealing my mortgage, I thought I was doing great. I think like Kyle nailed it on the head. We were all doing it. We're all following this basic standards of SEO, of where you should be putting your keywords, how you should be formatting your page, et cetera, et cetera. And then it became a point where if everyone's doing it, where's the differentiator? So Google had to change the differentiator in on page. And Quora and POP and all the other SEO tools out there that you guys can find help you find the differentiator to let you stand apart. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, your SEO wisdom is amazing. You have an amazing track record. Let's just say you're a guru SEO. How do you know everything you know is still applicable tomorrow? So tomorrow morning you wake up, all the headlines are massive Google update. How do you verify everything you know? And so the only thing you can do is look at your measurement tools, get a baseline, see how the report from before the update and the report from after the update changed. And that gives you the clues as to how the world's different now. But again, if you're not measuring, you just don't know. So changing your URLs, how many of you have had to go in and save the day after a website redesign?
I just had this last month with an audit that was done with like what has gone wrong. I've lost all my traffic, and even though the redirects were actually set up correctly on this, all of the target URLs went 1 to 2 folders deeper than they were. So you had like .com/category/target page, which is fine. And that turned into .com/category/subcategory/sub/target page.
Oh, nice.
Google just doesn't want to crawl that far anymore. But the redirect was set up.
Yep.
So they were good.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if Google has a layers deep limiter. Someday I want to make a very wide website and a very deep website and see how Googlebot behaves with both.
That'd be cool.
I think this one was, Ted and I were talking about this in the pre-shows. This is probably one of the easiest things to miss. Redirects you can screw up, or changing the URLs because the devs don't know. And then another one that goes right along with this one is having your staging site indexed. And it sucks for an SEO because typically, we don't get it until it's too late, and then you find it in the search results. So that's another one that needs to be probably bulked into that changing URLs with redesigns.
And sometimes it's not necessarily changing the URL that messes you up. Sometimes it's recycling. So you'll often see online retailers reuse a category for different purposes. So they'll have, category 5262 is the Easter specials. And then once Easter is over, they're going to, 5262 is the Christmas specials. And just by doing that, you're confusing that URL and what the purpose of that page is with Google. And so, that could be another thing where if you're recycling the same URL for multiple purposes, that could also be a complicating factor. Not tracking conversions. See, I like to know ROI, but a lot of SEOs don't like to track ROI. What do you guys think about ROI in marketing?
I think it's important, but it's probably the hardest thing to set up. I got the book, the Google Analytics book, sitting in my shelf to set this up. And then, what is a conversion for me versus what is a conversion for an e-commerce? It's easy. It's a sale, right? So you track through the cart process to ultimately leads to a sale. But for local, is it the phone call? Is it a conversion that you're tracking? And is the owner this on the page with you? And how do you lock those all in together? So it's a little interesting playing with tracking conversions. And like you said, we should be tracking the money, not the traffic. To summarize it a little bit easier, I probably dumbed it down a little bit too much, but tracking the revenue that the site is making. Well, how do you track revenue in local when you don't control the sales process, or you even know whether the lead turns into a sale? So this is probably, I don't know if this is a common SEO mistake, more as a common SEO problem, if the differentiation is there for you.
Yeah, well, I think the mistake is strategically not having any sort of ROI evaluation in their business model. I mean, that's clearly a mistake in strategy.
Yes.
But I think you're right. Most people rush to get their first dollar, and then they don't know what to do to remedy it.
Yeah, and a lot of new SEOs don't understand KPIs either, key performance indicators, and being able to, at the beginning of the phone call with your customers, finding out what are the key performance indicators that they're going to track you by. It got so bad even for us at OTT is you know, we have an aggressive sales team and they talk about leads and sales, but as an SEO, I'm worried about traffic, positions, and rankings. So those are the KPIs that we're reporting, and it gets lost in that conversation with the client. So I think that the biggest thing here to start off is identifying the KPIs. What can you reasonably do, and what can you reasonably promise? So if you're selling sales to a local guy, then you're full of shit because the local guy is the one doing all the selling. You're providing leads. That's a KPI that you can track. So that needs to be worked out.
Which in that situation, what you could figure out, and you'll never get an honest answers, but what its close rate is. You know, if you take 5 phone calls, how many do you close?
Yeah.
You know, he'll tell you 4, 5, all of them, 6.
I like, what is your close rate percentage? 85%. And then my first response is, then what do you need me for?
That is across the board. Everyone's at 80% plus closing rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that we always do when we start a project is we benchmark a page. So I do page level reporting. And I do that by combining info from Google Analytics and Search Console into one page to see how this page is performed, because I don't optimize a keyword, I optimize a page, obviously for a primary keyword, but the end result is that primary keyword, I'm going to win a bunch of secondary keywords, and I want to see how this page is performing as a whole. And so what I'll do is when we get in, we'll benchmark where that page is at, the users, the clicks, the impressions, the conversions. Hopefully they've got that set up in GA. If they don't, we do that as well. But then what's really beneficial about that is that when we report it, we have this giant yellow box on the right-hand side that says, this is where we started. You know, we had 50 clicks, 500 impressions with the other stats. And then they can see, we show them month over month data and then year over year data. And then they can also then see that one point. So if you ever have a month that's a little flat and they're like, man, what's going on? You just point right back to where they started. And then they can still see the benefit, but people forget. Once you're in month 3, people can't remember what was going on in month 1 at all. You know, the bar is now raised at the point that they are at. So if you can't quite get that conversions number, get those benchmarks there and then constantly show them to the client so they can't miss the value that you're bringing.
Yeah, because clients always think in terms of what have you done for me lately? And
it's human nature.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as you make 10 sales, you think that's the floor and that you're going to only make 10 from there and you have to go up. And if you have a down month, something went wrong.
Yeah. And, you know, any client that's operating that way, you know, make sure your pricing is set for that. So, you know, if you're being judged on overall improvement, you can have a lower price, but if they're only going to judge you based on new money every month, then you need a higher percentage of that new money to justify the cost. So, you know, same way for commissions. If you were going to be paid commissions on that, you know, a smaller percentage overall is more stability and easier to set expectations for. But if they only want to pay you for new money, then get a higher percentage of that new money. So keep that in mind if you ever do commissions. So infinite crawls. So I see this a lot in faceted navigation. So all the sorts and filters. You'll sometimes see it in primary navigation or category navigation. You'll see it in search, especially when people tie in search into site navigation and breadcrumbs. And sometimes you'll even see it in the shopping cart where, Googlebot can somehow get in and add products to cart and remove products from cart. And infinite crawls will typically cause duplicate titles, duplicate meta descriptions in Search Console. It'll usually inflate your index page count in Search Console. So if Search Console says you have far more pages than you have, you probably have an infinite crawl issue. And the problem with it is when you have an infinite crawl, you're not getting complete indexing. Google's getting 5% into your website and looping on the same stuff over and over again. And then it gives up after it got 120,000 pages of the same thing. So if you want a complete indexing of your website, you have to have very efficient and finite navigation. What do you guys think about infinite crawling?
This is something I have no knowledge of and don't understand.
Oh, Jesus. You're lucky. This is a freaking nightmare once you find it, though. And the best way to find it is to turn on Screaming Frog and see how long it takes your computer to crash, especially on large sites. And it'll go on and on and on and keep going forever and ever, i.e. infinite. So it's a pain. And once you identify it and you tell the devs about the problem, it takes forever for them to fix it. Every time. It's always been.
Well, it's architectural. They kind of have to reinvent how their web application works at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big problem, and it's fairly common because usually what happens here is the engineers rush into developing the website without involving the SEO in any of the decisions. This is the case of the engineers thinking they're smarter than marketing.
To be fair, they probably are.
Not always. When you screw over your organic revenue because you thought that taking a shortcut with parameter-driven URLs was a good thing to do. And that's a pretty big mistake and a costly one because they end up having to redo all that development work. And as you guys know, development isn't cheap.
What? Get it done in Fiverr.
Cheap.
So this one I see a lot. And I know a lot of people are like, just lazy load, but it's not the same thing. People don't understand how detrimental in some cases your cookies and headers can be on static resources. So here I have open the inspector, the network inspector in Chrome, and I'm looking at a web page, looking at some of the static resources like images and JavaScript files and static CSS files. And over here in the request headers, we see the cookie. And so the cookies are oftentimes thousands of bytes each. And then over here, we see all the static resources and the waterfall being written. And for, large websites, this can be hundreds of, little pixel spacers, little logos, little rounded corner graphics, those little Facebook or social icons, stuff like that. And all of those are sending this, 3,000 character cookie. So what's 500 times 3,000? That's how many bytes of extra wasted transfer per page load you're doing by not using a CDN. When you move these static resources over to a CDN, the CDNs are configured to not send cookies on these. And when your server serves up this little, logo, site logo, do you really need to check the cookies on that image access? You don't. It's a wasted resource. So when you put these static resources onto a CDN, what you find is that your page load time just gets super fast. And people always say, well, what about time to first byte? Just remember, these are request headers. You haven't even sent back a single byte of response HTML. You're sending all of this up front before you get a response. So this is guaranteed slowing down your web pages. And there's no jQuery or JavaScript lazy load plugin that will save you on this because it's all request side. What do you guys think about CDNs?
I like them. We don't set them up for our service because you have to have access to other things that, like client stuff, like Amazon S3, for example. You got to have access to their Amazon accounts and such. So we don't do that typically, but I like to do it. There is a risk. What happens if the service goes down and then your site goes down and then you're screwed? It's one of those things you have to cross your fingers and hope doesn't happen. Typically, I always recommend, if we're running into like an issue like this, is a simple put it on Cloudflare, and that helps. Obviously, Cloudflare is not designed to be a CDN, but it works well as a CDN, and then it's backed by Google data centers. So why not? Make it a little bit faster. That's kind of how I handle that situation right there. Especially if at some point you just don't want to deal with fighting with the CDN, or your site's not really that important to you that you want to pay for a CDN.
Well, Amazon's CDN service is so cheap. It would probably be the cheapest bill you have.
Yeah, but it's also not the easiest to use. So unless, like, if you're using WordPress, the easiest solution I found so far was WP Offload. And that made it a little bit better, but you still have to have a significant technical knowledge to think around with the cloud services over there in Amazon.
Yep. So duplicate titles and meta descriptions. Where I often see this the most is when you get into a paginated category. Category page 1, category page 2, category page 3 often has the exact same title and meta description all the way through. So usually I want those to go in and, worst case scenario, start adding page 1, page 2, page 3 to at least page 2 and after, so that you can make those unique. How often do you guys see this as an issue?
Well, it comes up in every site audit that I do. There's always duplicate titles and meta descriptions. But what I tell people is that it really only matters if this is a page you're trying to rank. If this is something that you want to get to be seen in Google, meta title is the most important on-page signal. So if you're just duplicating it across the board, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. And the other thing is that your meta description is something that can entice the click at a minimum, depending on your meta description views. But at a minimum, you're enticing the click. And so if you're not giving the searcher something that makes sense for them to click on your result, on that specific result, you're really harming yourself. On top of that, there are things that are probably more stronger ranking signals that pull from the meta description and get them into your different tag areas, like your open graph. So you might as well take the time to have a unique meta description just for that and that alone.
Yeah, these are like, look, we're doing something kind of fixes, in my view, especially when you're talking about like the blog pagination, blog page 1, page 2, page 3, that kind of thing, or categories or tags if you're, God forbid, you're using those. But for the most part, I do like Kyle. I look for money pages, and if there's money pages that should be ranking and they're duplicated somewhere else, then I'll fix those as a top priority. But the rest of that, I don't even mess with. And I actually just got into the habit of I use Yoast Pro Premium on most of my sites, so I just have this default setup that I upload in there, and it takes care of it all for me right off the bat.
So what do you guys think of that particular tool? I know a lot of people say Yoast sucks. A lot of people say I use Yoast. What's going on there?
It's a tool. They're all doing the same thing. They're helping you set your titles and meta descriptions, build your OG data, and they're helping you build your sitemaps. All of them are doing it, and then they add these extra features to it. So for me, as an advanced SEO, there's a lot of stuff in Yoast that I probably wouldn't leverage. And we don't. Like, I turn off all the analysis. I turn all that readability crap. All that stuff is all turned off. We use it for the primary function of setting the meta tag stuff. So, and then when you compare that to something like rank math or whatever, and those are all automating your schema. And I find it funny that people talk about, oh, rank math is a better thing, and I know what it's doing. And these are the same people that say that they manually write their schema. Well, if you manually write your schema, why are you using rank math? It's just redundant. It's a big old bloated plugin. All of them are eventually, but they're big old plugins that are doing something that you claim you're doing manually. So kind of call bull BS. They're as those progress, they're designed to make your life a little bit easier and simpler and push buttons so you can sip my ties on the beach. But I've been doing this long enough and never once was able to work on the beach. So
well, maybe that's a personal problem.
Could be. Well, that, and I was big enough to be a whale, so I didn't want to get harpooned.
I also can't swim. That's the worst. Like, why would you do that to yourself?
I can't work on the beach because I'm too busy drinking Mai Tais.
I was playing with something like Real Simple SEO or something like that. It was a plugin that all it did were the metas. Loved it. It was amazing to me that there aren't more of them that are just that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to worry about anything else.
I like Yoast. I like the way their sitemaps are handled out. No one else can, in my opinion, can make that sitemap as good as Yoast has got it set up. And then in a mass scale, like I'm doing a stupid large site, Yoast is handling everything just fine. So why change if it's, did they have some issues? Sure they did, but I've been using Yoast probably since I started doing SEO, and I can count on two fingers how many times they've had issues that adversely affected other people's websites. So
yeah, I wonder why people don't offer just a la carte SEO feature plugins. If you only want an open graph solution, if you only want a product schema solution, if you only want meta descriptions.
Well, there's no money in that. So you're investing in the dev to make it, and then there's no money in it, and then you're combined with the push button SEO market that wants things that do fancy shit. So if you put out an SEO tool that makes your titles, meta descriptions, handles all the no indexing, all the meta stuff, and you just put that out, well, everyone's going to look at you like, so I can do that with Yoast. You know what I mean? And they don't see beyond their little,
I could see two business models with it. One would be the ad revenue, because you can put ads in plugins, right?
Yeah,
you can.
And what did we learn from Clint, from Anita Campbell of small business?
The publishing episode, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was smallbusiness.biz. It was. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry, Anita.
Small business trends, wasn't it?
Yes, thank you. Smallbusinesstrends.biz. I think they get somewhere in the neighborhood of like $17 for 10,000 views.
Yep.
But if you had something where you've got it across enough sites and you have it set up so that like when they move from one thing to another, it turns into a page view.
Yep.
And you just set it and then it goes. And now you're making a couple $100 a month off something that probably cost you $1,000 worth of dev.
And that's a model that back when I started, that was a model that everyone was doing. And, now it's, people get pissed off because you put this cool plugin that 5 million people want to use and you put an ad in it. How dare you? Shut up, get over yourself. Or you're making themes and you lock your links into your themes that you give away for free. So it's all those things still work. It's just now you gotta, again, it's back to the shiny object guys, and they're looking for plugins or whatever that just do everything. It's the advanced SEOs, the people who will spend the money for it. They're just harder to find that would leverage a tool like we're talking about, a simple SEO plugin that only does this. I only want you to do this. Just do this for me and do it right and shut up. You know what I mean? So
this is what I've been screaming about with small scale SaaS. I've got a couple projects lined up that are just this, being SaaS, they're building out, a whole site, but the cost is in the tune of $5,000 to $10,000. But the idea is that if you get 100 people, it'll pay you $20 a month for it. That's $2,000 a month. Let's say operating costs are $400. At $5,000, you're ROI positive in 4 months. I think you do the same kind of thing with these single-use plugins or these single-use concepts. It's a renaissance. Bring it back.
Yeah. Most of the stuff, like the plugin that we just talked about, Ted, we're already doing it. OTT's already made it because we're tired of dealing with some of the issues that you have. And all I did was we sat down with the devs and we stripped down Yoast, took everything that we didn't want it and said, make this now.
What a great opportunity, though, because then you could put, like, do you not understand anything in SEO?
Well, now you can't sell it because you admitted to stealing it from Yoast.
Well, you think about it, all of them stole from each other.
It's a fresh.
They all stole from each other. It's all the basic fundamental things. So
it's all open source anyway. It's hard to complain when it's an open source code.
So the perfect solution fallacy. What is that, Kyle?
So this is mine. Perfect solution fallacy is that if something can't be perfect, then the solution can't work. It's the idea that just because an idea isn't 100% correct or 100% going to make it happen, it shouldn't be the way that you go. It's an easy fallacy to fall into, and it happens a lot in any aspect of life that people will complain about. But I see it a lot with, especially people that are at the beginning of a web project, that they get bogged down with the idea of not launching the perfect website at once. And as a result, they don't do anything. Or they have a website and they know a direction they need to go, but if they can't get that perfect solution, they end up in inaction. They end up stuck, not moving forward for fear that the next thing they do isn't 100% correct. I see it constantly, and it was one of those things that when we're talking about common SEO mistakes, it's the same thing in SEO. Your SEO doesn't have to be 100% to get action, to get benefit. But a lot of people won't do SEO or won't begin something in SEO because they're afraid that their solution they have is not going to be perfect out of the gate. So
yeah.
The idea of just doing it, just doing something.
I see that like in reporting tools. Oftentimes reporting tools will give you a letter grade for your on page or your overall SEO tuning. And the letter grades don't correlate with rankings. But what does is your letter grade typically relative to the competition. And so what that means is you don't need an A to rank well. You can rank well with a C as long as all of your competitors have Ds. And so
it's 100% right. And Pop, we actually had to take off our letter grades because they were making people sad. Like it was actually like people would call and be like, I don't think I'm that far off, but I'm getting a C. And I'm like, well, I don't need to make somebody's life miserable.
Well, you got to pretend you're grading on a curve and shift everyone 25% up, and a little more palatable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually, what I try to tell people with Pop, because we do have a percentage score, and the percentage score is relative to your competitors. That's the whole idea, relative to the roadmap that's built off of the data that you put in. But really, a good score, Clint, as you know, in Pop is around 70% or 80%. That usually gets the job done. And often there are things within your template or just things in life or things wherever that you can't get to 100. It's not a good idea to get to 100, just because that's just how it goes.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like you said, there's a tipping point where the changes are really not going to matter all that much. You've made all the major ones. You got an 85 to 90 in Pop. Just leave it alone and move on to something else.
I actually just did a new video. This is a shameless plug on using Pop effectively. But I showed this page that was at 44%. I did 15 minutes of work. I got it to 64%, and it moved from 12 to 3.
It's a great video, by the way. If you haven't watched it and you've seen the URL, check it out.
Part of it was how to use Pop and how to think about Pop, but also part of it was just like how to do SEO. Like you change the big things. Let's see how we do. Yeah. And let's see where we get. And you don't have to be so fixated on a score, because really the thing you should be fixated on is your rank. And then if you're getting improvement, that's all you need to worry about.
So if you want to see this video, you have to sign up for IMG. We gave you the link at the beginning. Sign up for IMG, go into the lounge and say, hey, Kyle, where's the video? And Kyle will share the URL.
I'll post it right there.
All right. Yeah, perfection is it's overspending. Sometimes people overspend with money. You just simply pay too much for something that you could have gotten cheaper. When you hunt after perfection, you're overpaying with time. You are delaying getting to market so that you can hit this artificial expectation you have in your head. When you could have launched weeks earlier and started getting customers, you can still continue to improve. But it's much better to continue to improve with a working business than starving yourself of resources and running the risk of dying before you launch and doing all of that nonsense. So chasing after perfection is overspending with time. Don't do it. Okay, what's this one, Kyle?
Last one, I've done everything. This is kind of similar to my on page is good, but you see this lament a lot in Facebook groups. I've done everything and I'm not ranking. And when you really get down to it, you say, well, tell me what you did. What is everything? And what they usually get into is that they've done a few hours of on page and they've tried 2 off page things. And that's everything. You know, like that in their mind, that's it. It's all done. And very similar to on the on page, a lot of it in my mind comes down to measurement. You know, what are you measuring? What are you benchmarking? What are you trying to do with this page? You know, but it's usually they get into that generalities of I did this and I was told that was what I was supposed to do. And I heard this one link technique and I heard this other link technique. And maybe they actually only did one of those link techniques. But usually when I've done everything, the very first thing you want to do is get back to the most basic things. Maybe you did some super fancy concept that's up here, but you missed those first ones at the bottom.
Yeah, you can tell who's measuring because they'll often tell you what you're going to say. You know, those customers that come and say, you know, I've done everything and, you know, I've measured and I know I'm down 30% on backlinks and my headings need tuning, but I've done everything. And so those guys are different than the ones who are I've done everything and I have no idea what's different versus the people who have measured. But I've seen both, and it's amazing to me how many people out there know what's different but still haven't acted on it. So I think beyond the knowledge of how you're different than your higher ranking competitors, there's also this motivation to take action problem that's also in there where people aren't acting on those deficits. And so if you don't change anything, you can't really expect change. I suppose you can hope for the best with Google updates, but that's not a great plan. Got to be more proactive. Do you have customers ever that don't change anything but expect improvement?
I've gotten past that a little bit, but now I've got a lot of clients that just aren't doing anything, but they keep paying.
Well, yeah, that's fine as long as they understand.
Yeah. But no, the thing about it too, and I'm sure Clint can attest, when you get to the point of a mature agency, one of the big things that you have in place is you are constantly contacting the client. The email that I always tell my account managers that I never want to see is the client saying, where are we at with this? And it does come in from time to time, but then they also know that I'm going to yell at them because the client should never, even the most neediest of clients, we should have enough communication going on that they really shouldn't ever ask that question. And so those situations where the client's not doing anything, they understand that it's on them. Probably where they're expecting the results and not seeing it, even though they were supposed to have done something, is that things sit for a long period of time. They forget because they're goldfish. That's basically what clients are. They swim around the bowl once and they're like, hey, where are we? Why aren't we ranking? And you're like, well, you actually had something to do. But if you're constantly on them about like, this is what's going on with the project, I think those issues go away a bit. It's not that it gets it done, but you don't get the, hey, where are my results when they were supposed to have, put this page up.
Yeah. Another trap to get into is they'll pass you off to a third party. So Kyle's the one that paid me, but then Ted's going to be your point of contact. Well, Ted really don't care, and he's not vested into it very much, and he doesn't give Kyle all the information. And now Kyle thinks that you, the SEO, aren't doing the job. So what we had to put in place is whoever's paying our money, whoever's the decision maker, they're CC'd into everything. We don't care who you want to talk to. You were keeping you informed. So that heads off that very email. Where are we at with this? Well,
That's smart.
Yeah. I'm, they hand you off to me, your host. All right. So that puts us at
1 hour.
Our show. Just wanted to remind people that all three of us are speaking at NFG Rockstars. So go check it out if you want to meet us in person and talk shop over some beers. It's a great event to do it at. The show has pretty awesome content. Anything you'd like to add, Kyle? Clint?
Price is going up on this after tonight. So
Coco.
Yeah.
So, yeah, early bird specials about to end. So check it out. And thank you again. Remember to subscribe. We count on your subscriptions to activate YouTube features so we can better serve you. So please do subscribe if you haven't already. And remember to check out SEO this week. So be sure and go back and check that out if you haven't already seen it. Any last thoughts? Or should we do questions? We didn't do questions.
We only really got 2 questions, and I'm going to do this backwards because there's one that's just dying to be answered, but I'm debating whether we should even give it attention. So the first one is from Joseph McLeod. How do you tackle building content for a large site?
Building content.
Yeah.
Well, usually you're looking at writers at some point. Sometimes you can license data. So you might explore if there are databases out there. Like if I was going to make a website about cat breeds, or something like that, I might go and try and find a database. But if you're making a website for consumer goods, there are databases based on the UPC codes that can get the nutrition info, stuff like that. So you have to understand your industry and what databases are out there that you could license into and what content you'd have to add to that to be, a unique value proposition. But nearly in all cases, someone's going to do the writing. If it's not you, it's someone else.
Makes sense. And then this one is from Pastor Duke. What do you guys think about the theory of semantic content vectoring?
Well, just that. It's a theory. Google's admitted to dabbling in it. There are people that swear by it, but haven't seen any really good science to back up those claims. So, it's out there. It's every bit is out there. It's natural language processing and rank brain. The question is, how are you actually going to measure its effects, improve its benefits?
You also have to think about what content vectoring is. Content vectoring is how close words are together, really, at the end of the day. And content vectoring is a way to predict the word that will come. So in content vectoring, it would say the banana is, and then there's a blank, and it might be yellow, might be delicious, might be nutritious, might be rotten. Those are the different words that can come up or as to what is expected, depending on what you were maybe talking about beforehand.
Your main topic.
It's predicting that next word, that is in close proximity. So you have to think about where's the value in that. So something that I tested not a few months ago was that somebody was talking to Website Auditor, those people, and they're talking about how they counted exact keywords, and so the guy had, red bicycles as his 2 keywords, as his exact phrase. And he had it on the page, let's say 4 times, but Website Auditor had it in 20 times. And he contacted them about that, and they said, well, Google looks at words that would count that as a phrase if it's within 150 characters. Getting to this idea of content vectoring, essentially they see it as a connected term when it's that close together, and that's how Website Auditor was getting to such a high count. And so we actually did that then, and it was an SIA test, and we couldn't. The page that had the words close together was beating the 150 characters, and I didn't actually realize how big 150 characters was. You're putting it onto the next line and then some. It's way far away from the doc.
And you have to understand the boundary conditions. Can it span HTML tags? Can it span end of sentence punctuation? Can it, if you don't know those rules, you're going to get weird outcomes.
So then the other thing you have to ask is, okay, let's say that there is some sort of vectoring going on. What are you going to do how are you going to use that, I guess, would be I've yet to see a really good answer on how to use the content.
Well, it comes back to keyword stuffing, but you stuff with proximity.
Right? I guess that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
But then again, the vectoring though isn't necessarily the keyword itself. It's the predicted word at the end of the sentence that would be expected based on that topic, or the word that's expected within that proximity. So if it's just the keyword itself, then there might be a distance that it's across, and so vectoring is a really sledgehammer way to look at something that is a thumbtack, or a little mini hammer. If it's really we're just talking about a certain distance of one word to another, that's very easy to look at and manipulate, rather than going through a whole content vectoring analysis.
Mm-hmm. So maybe this probably be a better topic for a whole show, because it goes on. You can get pretty deep into this. If you Google the term semantic content vectoring, there is no such thing, according to Google. You look it up in Google Scholarly, you look it up regular Google, it's not there. It was made up. It was a made up term. It is a made up term, but it's 3 terms: semantics and content. Semantic content is there. Content semantics is there. Content vectoring is there. So it's a term that came up, and it came up after our episode 11, where Joe Priest actually talked about this concept and using Google NLP API. And I talked about how we are using other tools like TextRaiser. Now we're using ClearScope and IBM Watson to put this stuff in together. So I think it's probably a really good topic for testing, and how do we test it and provide value to everyone. Made up term or not, it's a term that's out there now. So how do we prove whether it's leverageable? Which would be the 2 questions: is how do you prove it in a scientific way? And then, I can use it, and I am using it in the wild, but when you add all the other stuff that I'm doing, does it really matter? Right. And since I'm using it in the wild, I don't really measure it that closely on a single variable type of thing. So how do you do that with a test system that you guys have set up, where we're using fake random characters or fake keywords or whatever? And if that fake keyword has never been known to Google, then how is it going to do semantic content vectoring?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, the whole idea is that it's a way of detecting what's naturally happening in genuine content. So
to put that in English, if I write something about blue bicycles, it's a way of finding the terms that are natural, that I'm also going to put in my natural speech when I'm referring to blue bicycles.
You would naturally do this by authoring your own content and using the grammar of the language and the popular words of your day. Yeah. So it should be a natural outcome. And this is, an attempt at measuring the naturalness of that outcome.
Naturalness of the outcome.
What you can do is you can take 3 random words. Beer, cheese, comb is one that I used to look at semantic content, contextual terms, LSI. And then you actually get results. You'll get 10,000, 20,000 results. And then you can put the top 10 through that analysis and actually get the common terms between them. And
Right.
then what I did is I took a page and optimized for that random phrase. And on the one, I put in those contextual terms. And on the other, I just put in random terms. English, but not the shared contextual terms. And each time the page that has the contextual terms rises to the top. It's not the most perfect because there's a lot going on. I showed this in one of our early episodes, I think.
Yeah, it was episode 11 is when we
Oh, it's the
cracked
same
this
episode?
one pretty deep. Yeah, we went pretty deep.
You can do the same
Yeah.
kind of concept then with anything that you like. If you like the NLP API, you can do that. If you like Word2Vec, I heard about Word2Vec, which is a big content vectoring platform.
Uh-huh.
Back in last November, I was at a conference and they were talking about it. It was at Bali, Ted.
Word to Beck, is that how you said it?
Yeah, Word and then the number 2 and then Vec.
Okay. Word to Vec. Okay.
Yeah. Charles Flo was talking about it in his presentation. I want to say that was like mid-November
Okay.
of last year, and that was the first time I'd heard of that. And especially that tool, I didn't realize that there was a tool that was doing vectoring for you. But you can try all those things, same kind of concept. Do a random 3 phrase that pulls up some results, but not a ton of results, so that if you optimize for that phrase, you're probably going to be on page 1, and then you can start running like the all those top pages for the analysis of the terms that those things pull out, and then give it a go.
Yeah. So if you're doing that and you're paying $300 a month to learn about semantic content vectoring, you can do it for free. Look at episode 11 of SEO Fight Club. We won't steal your mortgage, we promise. Well, Kyle might.
I am. That is actually my goal.
He's a Democrat, so he's going to give your mortgage away to everyone else. But
how else are we supposed to do it?
With you, Ted.
Yeah, it's it might be a thing. I'd say in the court of public opinion, it's unproven at this point. So it's a hypothesis waiting for some serious testing.
So some real testing to see how it is. I like to see everyone get together and kind of prove or disprove the theory, because we use the NLP, and I know Kyle put NLP inside of Page Optimizer Pro, and I use it there because it's easier to teach my VAs that stuff there. But we also use IBM Watson plugged into your ClearScope, and then I'll look at that other one that you just mentioned, Kyle. I'll get the name again because I forgot it already. And that gives us a starting point to say, what is it? And Joe Priest, like I said, episode 11, he talked about this ad nauseum for us. And Kyle and I know a guy who's he's building content using this. He's building a tool that actually makes content for this on the fly. So it's something that I think it could potentially help us eliminate the need for more backlinks. I won't say they eliminate all backlinks, but it could, if we nail that process down, we'll need way less than most people will, because they're not going to the extent that we would to generate accurate on page content. So
all right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for watching and remind you to go sign up for IMG. So go back in the video, find that URL, and sign up and join the conversation.
Yeah. I think it's a great concept. Ooh, let's go. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Ted almost forgot. He almost bailed on you.
My on-page course is coming out in 3 weeks. And next week on Fight Club, we're going to announce an early bird with a bunch of, actually we're doing a whole bunch of IMG goodies. Like if you want to buy in, you can get a t-shirt or a sticker. I know Clint wants one. Stuff like that. But then also we're going to let some people hijack Ted's green screen if he gets his green screen back.
Are we actually doing that?
Yes,
Are we really doing that? Is that a thing?
That's a thing. You can give them the options. Give them choices.
Okay, well, you can either hijack my green screen, or you could have a slide at the end of the show.
There you go. Very valuable.
I would hijack your green screen and put the dancing baby behind you.
But I don't know that I could do fancy animated stuff, so it'd have to be a still graphic.
I'd figure it out for you.
Okay, well, yeah, Clint will have to figure it out.
But there'll be fun stuff like that. So also one of the things you can purchase would be a bucket of beers with Ted and I at one of the conferences that we're at. Also an hour on the phone with either Ted or I for a consultation, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of fun stuff built into it because it's kind of going hand in hand with our launch of IMG. So there's a lot of kind of IMG promo built into it, kind of our mini Kickstarter, if you will, as we kind of launch this off. So I think the course is good. The on-page course, it's as beginner or as advanced, I think, as you need it to be. You know, where if you are right at the very beginning, I think you can get a lot out of it and structurally, and I think if you're advanced, you can get a ton out of it as well. Even just like kind of coming back to some of your earlier processes. So it'll cover as much as I know about on page. I don't hold anything back, I think, as everyone here knows.
So it's a short course.
And I'm sorry?
So it's a short course?
It's half a module.
Yes. The Cliff Notes on page.
But the big thing is that this is how I do on page. So what you see in it is actually what I do. And so take that for what it's worth. Maybe you're like, this guy's a complete hack. I've seen his work. And that's fair.
What are some of the topics you're covering? I know you said you had a table of contents. You don't have to list them all. Just like
that's okay. The first thing we start off with is really, again, talking about kind of a beginner approach, but what is a keyword? And so when I think of keywords, I think of three things. I think of a primary keyword that I'm trying to rank a page for. I think of secondary keywords that I can win because of that primary. And I think of supporting keywords. And the supporting keywords are other things that are going on into the site. And what I then talk about is how I put those into a silo. And I walk through my whole silo process. And that's really a big part of the first module. Later on, I talk about what I do with my audits. So I walk through my entire audits of what I'm looking for and on-page kind of stuff there and how things are built on that. A lot. It's literally just what I do with schema, how I handle that, doing some on-page for third-party sites, which might be valuable. So you can kind of get, this is kind of taking over page one is optimizing third-party sites that might be showing citations and how they play into on-page stuff with the knowledge graph. What do you want to know? I mean, I really think it's what I do.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, a little bit about it. Like I've seen a lot of on-page courses, and you talk about this is how I do my audits. Are you going to provide them with template to the audit? This is how I do my keyword reporting, or let's say your editorial calendars when you're thinking about doing your silos. Are you going to provide templates for that and that kind of stuff? Obviously, I'm just hitting you without asking you, but that's my way. I like to ambush you.
A lot of it's in there. Also, what a lot of I have is because there's some things where it's like you need a style that you like. So one example that comes to mind is how to map your silos, because it sounds so easy, but it's not. And I talk about that you can use a spreadsheet, you can use drawing techniques, and then I actually point them to Steve Toth, who we plugged his SEO notebook. He actually has a really good one. I actually put a link to it and check out this one. But then as part of the homework, what I tell them is do one and I'll work with you. That's actually part of this, is that, the homework of it is actually doing the SEO. So, map out a silo that you have in place or one that you want to put in place, and then you can actually run that by me. And we're going to have a whole room in IMG for this. So the people who are in the course can then actually get direct access to me there. Say like, hey, in this lesson you said this, and this lesson you said that, or hey, can you look at my silo sheet, or can you look at my tracking sheet, or can you look at this sheet, and so it's a little more, because it's connected with IMG, it's a little more hands-on than a lot of courses, I think, because they will get direct access to me. And really what I want them to do is actually just do it. It's one thing to listen to a course. It's quite another to sit down and actually do something, and then actually have somebody look over your shoulder and say, yeah, that work is good. So that's a big part of it, is I'll be there in IMG to look over all the work that anybody does.
Well, which is key. I think Frank Kern has talked about this a lot, is that people will buy a course, a lot, maybe 50% will go through it and maybe 2% will actually implement it. And then if you're providing that personal attention, I know a lot of people say you're going to have direct access to me because we're in the same group, but if you're guaranteeing that kind of personal attention, they're more likely to implement it.
Oh yeah, I'll be there, and I mean, you guys will be there too. I mean, it's got to be like, I will literally be there.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
And the other thing is, you'll have an account on IMG, and there's always going to be the free chat groups at IMG, so you will always have free access to Kyle forever going forward.
Basically, I'm yours.
So if you want to own a piece of Kyle,
people,
and basically a small piece of me.
All right, good deal. Hey, last thing I got, Joseph Halavar, reach out to me personally, please. I'd appreciate it. And after that, that's all the questions in the chat.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks a lot, everyone.